vintage sand.
Hello, 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 Vintage Sand fans. We are back. None the worse for wear. It's Team Vintage Sand. That would be all-inclusive. Our good friend Michael Edmonds. Say hi to the nice people, Mikey.
Hi, nice people.
See, nice people. We have him trained so well, don't we?
Stop pulling that string.
Right, no, exactly. He's become so sociable lately. The legendary John Meyer.
It's time to get rid of the leash, though.
All right, yeah, well...
I agree.
I don't know. It kind of works, and it's useful. And your humble narrator, of course, Josh Cabot. And we are back. It is August. The heat wave is just breaking, so we are very happy. We're so happy to be back with episode 32. Holy moly, guys. How did that happen? Remember, it was just a dream in a Chinese restaurant a couple of years ago.
Three years ago.
That's right.
I said it would never work.
They said, well, they all laughed at Christopher Columbus. Now they've canceled him, so there you go. That's a life. So
that's another podcast.
It is. That's a whole other podcast and a half. So we are here in Vintage Sand Studios North for a change. Maybe a little echoey, but we're hoping not. For episode 32, which I have boldly named after Simone Signoret's autobiography. Nostalgia isn't what it used to be.
A great book.
It's nothing. A great line, and that's going to come up later.
Love the line.
Because we know what you're sitting at home thinking, my God, these guys are geniuses. How do you know so much about movies and yet remain so
Osmosis.
humble? Yeah, exactly.
Well, the fact is, I don't know anything about anything else.
Well, that's true. And the fact, you know a little bit about theater, Michael, from what I've seen.
Yeah, that's true.
And the fact is, of course, we watch a ton of movies, no doubt. But it's also no doubt that a lot of the knowledge that all of us have acquired about film over the years has come from books, from all kinds of different books. And we thought as like a short little hors d'oeuvre, hopefully shorter than our usual hour and a half episode, that we would talk to you about our favorite film books. And what inspired this, I just read a book that came out, The 12 Lives of Alfred Hitchcock by Edward White. And as you guys were saying before, most recent Hitchcock books are pretty terrible.
Yes.
This one talks about the fact that in all the interviews and everything he talked about, Hitchcock never talked about the First World War, which is insane because he lived in London. He was 14 or 15 years old when it started.
That's right.
And the point that White makes is that there was, if you know anything about the history of that war, there was the beginnings, nothing like 1940, of course, but there were the beginnings of the Germans would fly Zeppelins over and hand-drop bombs. Yes. And about 1,000 people over the course of the war were killed in London. And White says, where do you think this theme of the sudden eruption of chaos, out of order, that is the theme of just like every Hitchcock film, comes from? And isn't it odd that he doesn't mention the First World War and his experiences there? He was a teenager. It must have left a huge impression. Yeah. So that's the kind of thing that I would never have thought of on my own. And I am, as you guys know, frequent listeners, I'm World War I geek. And putting those two things together, it's like, of course, that's why chaos suddenly explodes in Hitchcock.
Explains a lot about birds.
About the birds, about turning around when someone calls George Kaplan, about, you're a musician at the Stork Club and you're arrested because you look like somebody. It's about bumping into someone's shoes on the train and it's the wrong guy.
Right.
It's your normal life rolling along and then boom. Literally boom, which Hitchcock must have experienced as a teenager growing up in London with the fear, even worse than the actual bombing itself because it was so minimal, but the fear of those bombs dropping, of just being on your street and then boom, that's Hitchcock.
Yeah, and I've always felt that most of the interviews of Hitchcock, he doesn't reveal, he covers up.
Yes. Right, especially the Truffaut book, although of course that's going to be on our list.
Truffaut sounds like an idiot in that.
Or a toady.
Yeah.
As much as I love him.
He was not an idiot. He was, though, definitely in awe.
He was deferential, yes. So what we always try to do on Vintage Sand, and I got the nicest compliment. John, maybe you passed it. Someone passed it on to. Someone said that listening to this podcast was like being in a diner and being right. That's what you said, yeah. And that people in the booth next to you or behind you are talking about movies, and you're overhearing it. That's what we want. We want to open doors. We've always said from the beginning that we are not film critics, we are not filmmakers, we are not film experts in any way. We're just over enthusiastic fans. And so we really want to open some doors today, and we'll hope you come away from this episode with a solid list of books that will help grow your own film knowledge as you keep on watching more. The only thing we're excluding, we've broken it down into categories. The only thing I was going to exclude fiction. I wasn't going to include Day of the Locust,
No.
or Terry Southern's Blue Movie or things like that.
No.
There are great books, fictional novels about Hollywood. Fitzgerald's Last Tycoon, which was unfinished, but worth reading.
It's still worth reading.
Those are worthwhile. So let's begin then with category 1, which is sort of the general film history, theory, reference books. And I think we're all in agreement that this begins and in some sense ends with David Thomson. So what's your Thomson book, John?
Oh, the biographical film dictionary, which it's addictive. It's a fun read, but also you'll get a little taste of the person's career, a little background about the person, but then he'll go into analyzing some of the movies. That person, if it's an actor, he'll give you sort of an overview of the career, and he's very opinionated. I don't always agree with him.
It's the most subjective, objective reference book there is. That's why I love it.
That's an excellent way to put it.
Has it been updated lately?
Yeah.
He comes out with a new edition every few years.
Okay, because mine is very old and crumbling.
You need to get a new one.
Yeah, I think so.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, and there are other reference books like Ephraim Katz's Film Encyclopedia, but, with IMDb and the other websites out there, it's almost obsolete.
Well, there's the David Cook book, A History of Narrative Film.
Yes, History of Narrative Film is
very
great.
good. Very good. And a book that I love is called Understanding Movies by Louis Giannetti. And
Wasn't it a textbook?
But I mean, I have a paperback version, and it's funny, it's still available. There was in fact, I want to get
It's in print.
Yeah, apparently it's still in print. I want to get into the new edition because he added a chapter that's devoted completely to Citizen Kane.
Nice.
So, each chapter is devoted to a different aspect of filmmaking. For example, cinematography or editing or, say, art direction. He has a chapter on film acting, and he has a chapter that's more literary, that's about screenwriting. It's a great book because also all the pictures in the book always are an example of what he's been talking about. And then I'll list various references too, go to such and such book if you want to read more about this. It's an excellent book.
And I also, if anyone's an English teacher or a film teacher who's listening, I strongly recommend James Monaco's How to Read a Film. I'm teaching my film class this year, guys. For the first time in 12 years, I'm teaching my high school film class. I'm so excited, and I don't use a textbook, but if I did, that would be the one I use, Monaco's How to Read a Film. I also recommend, it was originally, I had the great fortune of taking only 2 film classes in my life, but one was with Andrew Saris, the great American critic for The Village Voice, and his book, The American Cinema, originally published in '68, is still absolutely essential. It brought the auteur theory here to America, but the other one I took was with Jerry Mast at University of Chicago, and he was originally one of the editors of an anthology called Film Theory and Criticism, the latest edition of which is edited by Leo Braudy and Marshall Cohen. Cannot recommend that enough. All the great ideas. Andre Bazin, there he is. Sergei Eisenstein on editing, there he is. All the great theoretical, all the great filmmakers talking about how they do what they do. It's all in that anthology.
Is that currently in print?
It is. So if you have to buy, if you start with 2 books, definitely Thomson's Biographical Dictionary of Film, and edited by Braudy and Cohen, Film Theory and Criticism.
I would also recommend Thomson's, subject of him, 1001 movies you have to see.
Yeah, absolutely.
And some of them are movies he doesn't like. Like, he's very blunt about not liking Woody Allen. and the only
Yeah,
movies
he doesn't like Woody Allen.
and the only movies he reviews are Annie Hall and Crimes and Misdemeanors.
Oh, well, and he hates Kubrick too.
Yeah.
Yes, yes, he does.
Big Kubrick.
It's funny that one Kubrick movie he seems to kind of like is The Shining.
Yeah, he loves The Shining. Have you ever read Suspects?
No, but I remember.
Oh my God, I love that book.
Yeah,
Suspects. It
talked
doesn't
about it before.
doesn't belong here. He tells short stories about film noir characters who interact with characters from other movies and real life people, and in the end, it's a big reveal about who the narrator is. It's brilliant. I'm not sure it's still in print. Suspects, also by David Thomson. What about individual critics? Who are your favorite critics to read? I mean, are you guys Pauline Kael people?
I am, because she writes so brilliantly.
Right.
And
I don't agree with her much.
I don't.
Yeah,
Well, I
I'm-
agree with
I'm-
her part of
yeah.
the time. I like her love of Brian De Palma confuses me to no end.
History has proven her wrong on that one, I think.
Yeah, I agree.
If you had to recommend one Kael book, would it be I Lost It at the Movies or the Kane book?
No, not the
Not
Kane
the
book.
Kane book. Hey!
No, the Kane
Again,
book.
That
totally
one gave me
wrong.
nightmares.
The Kane-
Totally wrong.
The Kane book, I wanted to hit her. No, I'm sorry, I should not say that. But she is no longer with us.
I can't help but think that part of her motivation to write the Kane book was her dislike for Andrew Saris.
Yes. Oh my
It
God.
was
We have
probably-
talked here about
Yeah.
how much Saris and Kael. Saris would walk into class.
I would say I lost it at the movies. That was
Yeah.
the first one I read, but I've read all of them, and I think you can get now parts of all of her books in one volume.
Do you guys know Jonathan Rosenbaum? The guy who wrote for the Chicago Reader and now has his own website. He is brilliant.
Oh, yeah, I've read
He
him,
is
yeah.
so smart and so interesting and quirky. And any person whose favorite film in the world is Jacques Tati's Playtime is okay in my book. So if you want to read the one Rosenbaum book to sort of get a sense of him, Essential Cinema is his book. And that's
Stanley
what-
Kaufman.
Kaufman's
Yeah,
great.
that's-
Yeah.
yes.
Kaufman is great. James Agee on film.
Oh, yeah.
Is,
Well, of course.
absolutely. Listen. Agee was the only person who liked Monsieur Verdoux, which is actually a film that I
love that movie.
Everybody hated it.
You're kidding.
When it came out, yeah.
Everybody.
It was
hated
nominated for best screenplay.
but my God, Chaplin's turned into a monster, and
Yeah.
this is
Yeah.
his first post-Tramp film, and he's a murderer.
Well, I'm going to say something controversial then. It's my favorite Chaplin movie.
I'll still take Modern Times and City Lights, but Monsieur Verdoux is brilliant, and Agee was the only. I mean, the Times, all the Bosley
Really?
Crowther and all those people.
Well,
who ripped it.
Crowther was such a little old lady.
Agee.
I'm sorry, that's the only way to describe
Yeah,
it.
well, Warren
Yeah,
Beatty basically finished him with Bonnie and
yeah,
Clyde.
Yeah, how did he describe Bonnie and Clyde?
Oh.
There was I'm trying to remember that line. I'm going to have to look it up.
It's where you could probably see it in pictures at a crossroads because they go into detail.
And I think as we end this sort of general film knowledge section, we have to talk about the guy who's inspired so many of our episodes, Danny Peary. We're going to talk about cult movies.
It's a really, really fun book. And it's kind of funny because since that's come out, some of the movies in there have become more mainstream.
Yes.
But the writing is really good. It's not a silly book at all. He analyzes and talks about the movies. It's very, very smart.
There are 3 of them, right? I think there are 3 volumes.
Yeah,
of it.
I think he did come out with other editions. I think the next one was called More Cult Movies or something like that.
Or Cult Movies 2 or
Yeah.
something. Something clever like that.
I forget. But and also the choice of movies is very, very varied.
Yeah, from
Eraserhead to The Searchers.
Right. Well-regarded masterpieces to little cult films like,
But I understand why when I first read it, he had The Searchers in there because at the time it was hard to see. It rarely had shown.
Yeah.
It's hard to imagine
A lot
now,
of people
right?
were not familiar with it at all.
As a kid, I don't recall ever seeing it on television.
I don't either. And it was my father who first told me about it because he saw it when it first came out. And when he was on a business trip, he just went to the movies one time and he said, they never show The Searchers. I said, what's that? And he started telling me, he said, it's a great movie. I said, you have to see it. It's like, but it never shows.
Wow. It's so fascinating to track the changes in taste over the years. But of course, the other Peary book that we love, because we based 3 episodes on it, and we're going to base our October episode on it, as well as the alternative Oscars book, where he goes through every year from 28 to, I think, Silence of the Lambs in 91, and talks about what won and what should have won and why. And that's a wonderful book.
It's a fun book.
He doesn't write books, and he's got a website, but that's Danny Peary, Peary. So hopefully, those are your basic introductory.
He has a lot of different interests.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, that would explain it then.
Yeah, no, he's all over the place in the best possible way, though. And I always like his writing.
He's also a big New York Giants fan, so I like him.
Why, when I'm having such a good time, you have to bring up football? Said the Jets fan.
I'm sorry.
Yep, we swore we weren't going to get season's tickets, and for the 57th year of Vintage Sand, people, so you're probably turning off right now, so why am I listening to someone who's been going to Jets games since 1971 and paying for it? So, yeah, I would totally understand if you turned us off right then and there.
No, I don't think so.
I also want to mention 2 books by directors that sort of talk about film in general. Well, first of all, you have to talk about What is Cinema, Andre Bazin's 2-volume What is Cinema, because that's where film criticism is really born. I mean, AG...
Whether or not you agree with him,
But those are the principles on which he founded Cahiers du Cinema. Those are the principles on which Truffaut and Godard and the New Wavers made their films, so, nothing without... And there's a wonderful anthology edited by a guy named Jim Hillier called Cahiers du Cinema in the 1950s, which is all the best writing by Truffaut, Godard, Romer Chabral, Demy, all those guys. So I really recommend those. Sergei Eisenstein's Film Sense.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, my God. It's still the best book ever written about editing, and it was published in the 20s.
Yes, that's a must.
Yeah.
That is a must. And there are 2 other books that are pretty good about editing, which is the Ralph Rosenblum book, When the Shooting Stops, The Cutting Begins.
Oh, I don't know that one.
Yeah.
I learned something on Vintage Sand.
And there's a book by
Allen.
and there's a book by Walter Murch and Francis Ford Coppola, In the Blink of an Eye.
Oh,
I'm not familiar with that.
Is that about editing Apocalypse or the things they worked on together? Interesting.
Yeah. There's also a book that's interviews with Walter Murch. That's I have not read, but I've heard it's good.
All right, so there you go. And I have to mention Robert Bresson's Notes on the Kinematograph, which is very arcane and obscure, but if you love Bresson, and Bresson is hard to love, but once you do, you never fall out of love. Yeah, he's
not for everybody, but he's a great director.
If you're a budding filmmaker, it's not like you're going to read the Bresson book and say, okay, this is how I'm going to make my films. I don't think anyone else can make films like Bresson did, especially these days. Maybe.
No, I agree with you.
But that's a subject for we'll do a director study on Bresson at some point, if we're really depressed and it's winter and, we have to sell the donkey to somebody and, oh my, nice happy stuff.
We get thrown in jail for a crime we didn't commit.
Yeah, or escape from a prison to Mozart. Yeah, I mean, amazing stuff. So, category number 2, studies of individual directors. So, Michael, let's start with you. Where do you go with that?
I would agree with you on Eric Romer and Claude Chabrol's Hitchcock.
My only problem with that is that it was written in 1957, so it was right before
Vertigo.
Damn.
Yeah. Right. And I'm such a fan of both of them as filmmakers.
Yeah.
Anyway.
I think it's the first great book written about one director.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
And then you have to, as much as I hate to do it, because frequent listeners know how much I hate him, but Peter Bogdanovich's books on Ford and Wells were really the first.
I guess, although, boy, I have not read Bogdanovich's book on Ford. And one of the reasons...
It's wonderful. I hate to say it.
Is because every time I hear Bogdanovich interviewed, he always goes on about how John Ford had to talk Ben Johnson into doing The Last Picture Show because Ben Johnson thought the script was too dirty. Which, I'm sorry, has got to be a crop. A total crop. Ben Johnson had just finished shooting The Wild Bunch, for God's
Yeah,
sakes.
exactly. Well, and you know, my thing with Bogdanovich is the first name stuff. You know, I remember when I had lunch with Orson, and Orson said,
he really was good friends with Orson. Orson Welles lived in his house for a while.
Yeah, no, and he was one of the few people who actually supported.
If you listen to one of the podcasts, he talks about how Orson Welles kept stealing all the ice cream.
Well,
that sounds about right. That does sound about right. So
my favorite book about an individual director is The Art of Alfred Hitchcock by Donald Spoto.
Yep.
And what this book made me look not just at Hitchcock films differently, but all films differently, because he really stresses the whole concept of form and content, about using the camera and other aspects of filmmaking to express theme and characterization and subtext. And after really discovering all of that and reading the whole book, I was like, oh my God. And I started looking at movies much differently. And then I would see different directors make a showy camera movement. It's like, well, what's that supposed to mean?
Right, why are you
doing that?
No.
How do you feel about Spoto's The Dark Side of Genius?
That's mine. I love that, even though it's kind of a mix of gossipy.
It is.
But I must have read it 30 times in college when I started to really get into film, and at least he owns up to his trying to cover for the technical deficiencies of Marnie in the art of Alfred Hitchcock.
Well, we don't know how much he knew or didn't know at the time.
Well, when he wrote Art of in '76, he thought that that the cheap sets and everything were just
he thought it was
expressionistic.
Expressionism. Yeah.
Whereas by the time he wrote Dark Side of Genius, we kind of knew a little bit more about what had happened with Tippi Hedren and why he.
I'm not skeptical about what happened with Tippi Hedren, and we've got he said, she said. But one of the things she always complains about was how Hitchcock blackballed her, and that she couldn't work after Marnie, and that's simply not true. She worked constantly.
In Hollywood?
Yes, but they weren't A films. They were TV films. They were films where she constantly worked. Guys, let's be honest with you. Tippi Hedren's not that great of an actress.
But I'll tell you, every time I go back to The Birds and Marnie, I'm surprised by how good she is. She's not amazing. She's not Grace Kelly in Rear Window, but she's pretty good.
I think one of the problems with Marnie, frankly, is her. I don't think she
was a limited actress. There's a moment, for example, in
when she shoots the horse in Marnie.
Well, I was going to say in The Birds, for example, where she talks about her mother. And if it was a better actress, the camera probably would have stayed on her face. Instead, Hitchcock has her step away and turn away, which is something he used several times before, because he would learn the limitations of an actor, and that's a way to get away with it. It works well in that.
Yeah, well, I think she's limited.
You're the only thing I ever did love.
Hurting my knee, Marty.
Hurting my knee, Marty.
I actually met her. I met her once.
You met Louise Latham?
Yes,
That's
and
okay.
I asked. I was just in the lobby of a theater. She was by herself, and I went up to her and I just said, "Hello, I loved you in Marnie," and she did not want to talk about it.
Interesting.
I don't think she was a fan of that film.
Well, if we're going to drop names, I had lunch with Tippi Hedren, so
what?
Let's move on. Yes,
Wait,
let's not go there anymore.
Oh,
okay,
that's 2 other episodes.
Yeah,
Wait
that's
minute.
it. I won't say anything more.
Oh, okay. No, I didn't even know that. I've known you for 35 years. I didn't know that.
Well, my meeting with Louise Latham was like 30 seconds. So.
All right. We also have to throw in Robin Wood, right?
Yes.
That is an excellent book.
Hitchcock's films.
Excellent book. And he doesn't do all the movies, he only does a few, but especially the chapter on Vertigo is great. What's really weird, though, he then did a book on Howard Hawks, and...
Not as good.
It's just like, I think you're reading too much into it, Mr. Wood.
No.
Well, and especially because Hawks would have probably killed him, because Hawks, did not want to be...
Yeah.
He always said that if you see me directing, I'm doing something wrong.
Yeah.
Because he was always in the service of the story. I'm going to throw in a couple of books that are hard to track down but worth it. They're out of print, but you can find them. University of California at Berkeley did a really interesting series in the early 70s, and 2 of those books, Lottie Eyes. Can you believe? I would put Murnau up among the greatest directors of all time, especially for terms of pure camera. There is one biography of Murnau in existence in English. maybe in German, and it's by Lottie Eisner, who wrote The Haunted Screen, which is also part of that series, which is still the best book about German Expressionism, I think. So, and also in that series is the only book I've ever seen about Jean Vigo by Salas Gomez. That's just called Vigo. Yeah, they're hard to track down, but both worth it. Did you guys read Conversations with Wilder?
Absolutely, I have it.
The Cameron Crowe.
I did. I liked it very much.
I liked it, and we didn't even mention Hitchcock Truffaut, but except at the beginning. But
I don't think the book's very good.
No, you don't learn
and
too
I've
much.
never quite understood why it got so much attention.
Because of them.
I guess.
And I'll close this section with something by Paul Schrader. Paul Schrader's PhD thesis is it's a very difficult academic and challenging book, but it opened my eyes and helped. It's called Transcendental Style in Film, and it's about Ozu, Bresson, and Carl Theodor Dreyer.
Yes.
Yeah, which I am comparing the three of them.
Yeah, I read that a long time ago. Yeah, that's really
wonderful
good.
book.
Yeah,
wonderful book. Difficult, as I said, very academically oriented. But
yes.
As long as we're on directors, there's one I want to mention.
Go.
By my current favorite writer, Mark Harris, on film, and it's Five Came Back.
Five Came Back, yes indeed.
Story of Hollywood in the Second World War and how it affected Frank Capra, John Ford, John Huston, George Stevens, and William Wyler. And for those people who don't want to read, there's also a 3-part documentary on Netflix.
And that's excellent. And
it's,
also, Netflix has some of the films that they made to watch. Yeah. Although I must warn anyone, if you haven't seen the one
George
about
Stevens.
the concentration camp.
Yeah, that one I have.
But if you have not seen those, it's an absolute must to see those.
It is.
But you
gotta have a strong.
That's harder than Night and Fog.
Yeah, and it permanently changed George Stevens. As a director, he just.
Well, they were all changed. I think
particularly,
but
Stevens.
Understandably, he was changed the most.
Yeah.
So now, exit question on this category: have you guys found a really good book about Wells? I know Simon Callow is working on that 3-part biography.
Yeah, I read the first one. It wasn't.
Yeah, I know. I read Barbara Leaming's book, which came out around the time Wells died in '85. And
I liked it.
Okay.
It's not a great book. I haven't found a really good book that really analyzes the films themselves.
Exactly.
It's. I guess maybe they figured his life was more colorful than the movies.
Which is unfortunate. And the same thing about Kubrick. I've yet to find a really good book about Stanley Kubrick and his films. The best I've seen is just called Kubrick. It's by Michel Simon, but it's not very good. Nice illustrations, but have you guys read a good Kubrick book?
No, but when we get into biographies, I do want to talk about one of the best insights into Kubrick, and we'll get into that a little later.
All right, outstanding. Very quickly, our third category, just to run through quickly, is representation, because that is such an important idea these days, and it's interesting. I was saying I haven't taught my film class in 12 years. I'm going to have to teach it very differently because, not surprisingly, on my original syllabus, which is basically American film, just about everybody's a white man, and, I need to deal in one way or another with other voices. And so some of the best books to read on that, still Molly Haskell, From Reverence to Rape,
that was excellent.
Is still probably the best book, even though it's fairly old, about the representation of women in classic Hollywood cinema. Vito Russo's The Celluloid Closet.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, which is the first and still one of the best books about homosexuality in Hollywood film.
It's beautiful and heartbreaking at the same time.
And I strongly recommend a book called Black American Cinema, which is edited by Manthia Diawara, which has some great essays, and anything by Donald Bogle, Bogle. Any of the books he wrote about African American cinema, going all the way from Oscar Micheaux all the way up to the 70s and 80s. All very worthwhile. Anything else to add? I've yet to read a really good book on Asian or Latinx representation.
I haven't either.
Peter Fung wrote a book called Identities in Motion, which I've heard is good. I haven't read it myself, but that approaches the Asian. If you really want to understand the Asian experience through media, read Charles Yu's novel Interior Chinatown. It's the best thing I've read this year. It's absolutely brilliant. All right, genre studies, category 4. My ex-professor from University of Chicago, Jerry Mast, wrote, which I think is still the best book on silent comedy, called The Comic Mind, which is, of course, about Chaplin, Keaton, and Lloyd, but it's also about the lesser, Harry Langdon and even up to Jacques Tati and other people who dabbled in silent comedy through the 40s, 50s, 60s. That's a lovely book. And I already had mentioned The Haunted Screen by Lottie Eisner, which is still, I think, the best single-volume study of German Expressionism. Any genre books? Any books on noir or...
There are a lot of books on noir.
That stayed with you?
Nothing I can think
I read,
of.
Foster
Yes.
Hirsch wrote a book called The Dark Side of the Screen that is a very good overview. Not too deep, but it's a good overview of Noir 1.0.
I have to say, and this is doesn't.
And as far as myself, I've always kind of concentrated on reading books that either were, there really, unfortunately, there really are very, very few really good biographies of either directors or actors. They usually tend to stress the gossipy kind of stuff. But I generally was drawn towards books about directors that were more analytically oriented, dealing with the movies. And there really aren't that many really good ones of those, are there?
No, but the ones that are good can be really...
I think it depends on the writer.
Right. Thomson.
Well, yeah,
David
definitely.
Thomson has opened more doors for me in terms of my understanding and appreciation. And Spoto, as you say, John, me too.
And I've got to say, and I said it on a previous broadcast, Mark Harris, again,
Yes.
this biography of Mike Nichols. Now, Mike Nichols is half movies, half theater, and he does it all. Harris does it all, rather dispassionately, everything you ever want to know about Mike Nichols is in that book. Yes, there is some gossip, but it doesn't come off as gossip because he talked to everybody.
Well, it's different when you're talking about how, a person's private life affected their art.
Right. That's where it gets interesting and speculative.
Which is something that The Dark Side of Genius, that's Photo Book, that's what that's about.
Yeah.
But then you have something like the Shelley Winters books.
Oh, I'm bringing up because I think that is actually the best.
Well, they're fun.
They're a little more than fun. But I really got a sense of Kubrick by reading her book.
Oh, okay.
Oh,
I see what you mean.
from Lolita.
Yeah. From Lolita, because she really, really talked in depth about her work on that. And when the book came out, all people were talking about was all the affairs that she talked about,
and that's what a lot of the biographies stress.
Yeah, it was fun, but the thing about Shelley Winters is I liked her more as a writer than as an actress because both her books, she was a good actress.
I love her in Night of the Hunter.
Yes, she talked about that in depth. She talked about working with Lawton and how Lawton.
She loved Charles Lawton.
Yeah,
a lot of people in Hollywood loved.
Well, Lawton was her
Lawton.
teacher at one point.
That's right.
But so with the Shelley Winters books, and they're both still in print. And unfortunately, she was going to write a third one because it only went up to 1972.
Oh, to Poseidon Adventure.
Yeah, that was how she ended the second one. But
it's got to be.
They're both still in print, and if you're going to read any autobiography of any actor, because most of them you come away with thinking, like Katharine Hepburn or Davis or Olivier's, or Brando's, you just come away with.
Oh, the Brando autobiography is it's really not very good. It's disappointing.
Most of them aren't. You were talking about Simone Signoret. That one is very good.
Yeah.
Nostalgia isn't what it used to be.
Well,
What a
it's
great
a title. I mean,
That is
have you read Fun in a Chinese Laundry? Von Sternberg's autobiography.
Oh.
That is the one great director autobiography that I have ever found. Fun in a Chinese Laundry by Joseph von Sternberg. Because it's a combination of what he was trying to do. And his Dietrich films in the early 30s were just stunning. Watch Scarlet Empress, everybody, please. Just completely out of this world. But it's a mix of that and gossip and Hollywood.
When does it go? What does it go up to?
I think it goes up to. He stopped making. I think his last film was Jet Pilot, which was in the mid-50s.
I think you're right.
You know what I just saw? I just saw Anatahan, this Sternberg's second to last film, the one that was made for about $1.99 about the Japanese soldier on the island who doesn't know the war is over.
Yes.
Wow, is that an interesting and abstract film? It's just the opposite of Scarlet. But
how did you see it?
I have it. I got it on DVD.
Oh, you have it? Okay.
Yes. Other genre, we were talking about genre studies. I have to, Eisner's, as I said, Haunted Screen is the go-to on, but there's another one, and that, of course, is Siegfried Krakauer's From Caligari to Hitler. Mm-hmm. Have you guys?
Yes.
Heard of it? Oh my God! Because what it does is take the films of Lang and Murnau and Vina and all those other directors and shows how characters like Caligari, like Dr. Mabuse in Lang's series, all these manipulative hypnotist types who turn decent people into evil.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you're at 1933 and, Hitler takes power. And you're like, oh my God, you can see the rise of German fascism in the Expressionist films.
Oh,
right?
Yeah.
Think of the marching blocks of workers in Metropolis.
Oh, Metropolis is brilliant. Metropolis is almost like the rise of Nazism condensed into a movie.
Boom.
It's scary in a way.
So that's
and to see that on a big screen. I saw that at the Ziegfeld.
Yeah. No, it's a great movie.
If you are interested at all in German history from that period or in a German Expressionism film, if you're a film fan, you have to be, again, that's Siegfried Krakauer's From Caligari to Hitler. I also got to throw in Midnight Movies, Hoberman's book. Jay Hoberman
that was good.
Always played second fiddle to Saris at The Voice when, in their heyday.
They would argue sometimes.
But Hoberman.
But that's a brilliant
after
book.
Saris retired, Hoberman was the first string.
And that is a wonderful book, and it's the first book that really, starting with films like El Topo and the other Jodorowsky films of the early, and then into John Waters, and then into Eraserhead and Rocky Horror, and those great cult films, the Midnight Movies of the 70s.
What I really miss about The Village Voice was when Saris would do. I would look at every week would look at all the TV listings that they would have, and he would do a short capsule of each movie, and it's like, well, I want to watch that one, I want to watch that. No, I'm not going to miss that one. Andrew says don't watch that one. But they were brilliant.
Yeah.
The Village Voice, if you were a New Yorker in the 70s and 80s, that was your life. But it came out, on Wednesday?
Yeah, Wednesday.
And if you wanted to get tickets to a concert or rent an apartment or figure out what to watch, or you waited till 11 o'clock the night before and the deliveries came and you get it, and it was free, and it was amazing. Christgau on music and Richard Goldstein and all these amazing writers, and Nat Hentoff and Wayne Barrett doing their political stuff. God, okay. I hate to, nostalgia isn't what it used to be. But exactly.
I do miss The Voice.
But there's nothing quite like that. There's great writing out there. It's so diffuse, though, because it's online. You have to really dig to find it. All right, so category 5, films that cover books that cover a particular era or year. Oh. So you want to start with Mark Harris?
Oh yeah. Everybody who's listening to this should read this book. The Pictures at a Revolution, 5 movies and the birth of the new Hollywood. And goes into depth over the 5 movies nominated for the Academy Award for Best Picture of that year. And 2 of them were considered groundbreaking, radical movies, Bonnie and Clyde and The Graduate. 2 of them are more on the conservative side, Guess Who's Coming to Dinner, and Dr. Dolittle, who they were blunt about it, had no business even being nominated. And then the one that was sort of in between was In the Heat of the Night. But it's not a book. When I picked up the book initially, I thought, well, I'm going to just skip the parts about Dr. Dolittle. Who cares? And they turned out to be the funniest parts of the book.
What a disaster.
Yeah, I wouldn't call Guess Who's Coming conservatives. It's old-fashioned.
Old-fashioned.
Yeah. It's more.
Well, it's worse because it's old-fashioned, but it pats itself on the back for being progressive.
That's a good way to put it.
Stanley Kramer.
That's a very good way
it
to
does,
put it.
Although there was controversy when that came out.
Oh, I know.
I
know.
In the South, believe it or not.
Yeah.
Well, thank God we've gotten past racism in this country.
That problem's all solved.
Okay, what do we got next? Minnie's piece? What else?
Really read that book.
The environment.
Because I actually reread parts of it just for this podcast.
He writes so beautifully.
He's such a good writer.
Right?
God,
that is our best.
That is a great book because it's at once entertaining and informative and in-depth.
Well, that's how I felt about the one I just finished, about Mike Nichols.
Yeah,
because I'm not a huge Mike Nichols fanatic.
Yeah.
I'm not. He's made some good movies, he made some really bad movies. But just because he wrote it, I picked it up.
Right.
And, you know.
Yeah, so if there's a contemporary name to take away from this, it's definitely Mark Harris with 5 Came Back, Pictures of the Revolution, and the Mike Nichols book.
That's it. Those are the only 3 books he's written.
He is married to
Tony Kushner.
Right,
Yep.
That's right. That's a power couple.
Yep.
Interesting.
Mike Nichols and Diane Sawyer were at his wedding. And Diane Sawyer was the one person who did not talk to him.
Interesting.
She did not want to, and he respected that.
Okay.
Well, if we're going to talk about particular Easy Riders, Raging Bulls,
Peter Biskind, and then
great book.
Yep, it is the best book about new wave Hollywood ever, easily.
Yeah.
Have you read the other one, Down and Dirty Pictures?
I have not.
Down and Dirty Pictures is the same idea, but it's about from sexualized and videotape through Pulp Fiction. It's about the sort of rise of Miramax is at the heart of it, and Tarantino and Soderbergh and those directors of quote-unquote indie film from 89 to mid-90s when Miramax got bought up by Disney and all the little studios got bought up by the big ones, and that was it.
Yeah.
But Easy Riders, Raging Bulls is a flippin' masterpiece.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's great. Great book.
I did for my virtual film society, we did New Hollywood, and I was referencing that book all the time. It's so good. I also want to mention I'm a silent film freak, so the 3 top books on silent film, if that's your thing. Kevin Brownlow's The Parade's Gone By, British critic, it's a classic. The one that was actually written in 1926, the first really great book about film called A Million and One Nights by Terry Ramsey, also a British critic. And William Everson's American Silent Film. Also, guys, have you read Thomas Doherty's Pre-Code Hollywood?
No.
It's not amazing, but it is probably the best book I've read about 1929 to 34. To that period where just about anything goes, and before the Hays Code came in, and there was some weird, wild stuff going on.
Oh my God, I was watching on Turner a couple nights ago, Love Me Tonight, which is 1932 musical, and they had some lines in there. I mean, Myrna Loy played a slut.
Well, how about Babyface?
Yeah,
Whoa.
It's another one.
I mean, who
But
makes...
I forget about the pre-code. It's like, oh my God, how did they get away with this?
It's because they were allowed to.
Yeah.
And King Kong, scratching
Fay
Ray's dress and then sniffing his finger. Like, what? How'd they do this in 1933?
Yeah, there's a snippet where you see her nude in the water.
And then
they edited it for TV, and people never knew that any of that stuff was in there.
Yeah.
And also, who was it in Tarzan and His Mate? Was it Maureen
O'Sullivan?
Maureen O'Sullivan, who was actually sort of nude in that one scene there.
Yeah.
She was hot.
She was very beautiful.
Freaks, and got made in The Island of Lost Souls, which is just so disturbing. Got made. It's even more disturbing than the Island of Dr. Moreau remake with Marlon Brando and.
I'm
Most
not
Dangerous
sure which
Game.
is more disturbing in that movie, Brando's weight or Val Kilmer's
Oh my God, what's that little thing following him around? I have no idea what it is. But Island of Lost Souls, the original adaptation of H.G. Wells' The Island of Dr. Moreau.
Now, if we're talking about film of a particular era or year, there are 2 books I want to bring up.
Go.
One of them, if you've been watching Turner Classic Movies lately, it's because it's on their podcast. Julie Solomon's The Devil's Candy, which is the anatomy of a Hollywood fiasco, the bonfire of the vanities.
Right.
Now, I haven't been listening to the podcast because apparently I guess it's her and De Palma. But
I don't know if it's with in the cast.
Yeah,
I don't know. I haven't listened to them yet.
I haven't
I've
either.
heard good things about it.
Well, I read the book, so I didn't feel
But
like
apparently she was pretty much on set.
Yes, because De Palma wanted her on set. She was a writer from the Wall Street Journal, and she was on the set the entire time because De Palma thought this was going to be the great film that it was. That it wasn't. I mean,
I love the book.
I love the book too. Frankly, for me, the minute I heard about the casting, I thought, Tom Hanks?
Yeah,
Melanie Griffith, Bruce Willis?
Yeah.
No, something is really off here.
Yeah.
So I kind of predicted the fiasco because
not only that, but whether or not you like De Palma, he's just the wrong director for that. I don't know why he got involved with that.
So what is De Palma the right director for? If you're ripping off Hitchcock, or?
Well, yeah.
Yeah, or Antonioni,
Okay, here, believe it or not, because you know my hatred of Tom Cruise, the first Mission Impossible
is not bad.
is not bad.
Oh yeah, it's fun.
Yeah.
And he directed it.
I admit to I happen to like The Untouchables. I
love
I
Carrie.
think it's a very entertaining movie.
I like Carrie.
And I like Dress to Kill a little bit.
I
You
did
like
not.
Dress to Kill?
I did
I
not.
did.
Oh.
I'm getting shunned.
That's the one De Palma movie I really hate.
Well, the only movie I've ever walked out on my life was Body Double. Because I sat there going rear window vertigo, and then you get the shot where there's a murder with the pneumatic drill, and it's shot from behind the guy, and so it looks phallic, and I'm like, okay, I'm nobody's feminist, but you're a sick bastard, Brian De Palma. I'm out. I like Blowout too.
I didn't care for that.
I liked some things in it. I particularly like the part when he's putting the stills together to make a film.
The
of what
Antonioni
happened.
part, yeah.
Yeah, I think I actually really enjoy that part. Nancy Allen, I think, really kind of ruins.
I know, she's not great.
She's a terrible actress.
She really is. She's even bad in
But
RoboCop.
but there are a lot of people who think very highly of that movie.
I suppose Pauline Kael loved all of his films, I think. The war movie that everybody loved.
Casualties of
Edge
War.
of War.
I didn't get it.
No.
I thought it was...
Michael J. Fox was miscast.
It wasn't
terribly
Platoon,
miscast.
or Full Metal Jacket, that's for sure. And it
but-
came out around the same time.
And when you were talking about Dress to Kill, when I saw that, I hadn't seen Vertigo. And the one thing I was taken in...
Well, Obsession is what you're
Obsession, yeah. And
No. I'm talking about, well, Obsession too, but I'm talking about the...
he always rips Hitchcock.
talking about. When he's watched, the museum.
Museum. I was fascinated by that scene until I realized it's a total ripoff.
It's such a fine line between homage and ripoff.
That
isn't
was
it?
ripoff. And if I had seen Vertigo before that, I would have probably walked out of Dress to Kill.
Yeah. Oh my God. Did you guys like Body Double?
Nope.
Oh no. God. It was appalling. The only other
No,
book.
what's really kind of weird is we've seen all these movies, but we.
Why
do we keep going back?
Because of my admiration of Pauline Kael, I said, well, maybe I'm missing something. I
Right.
kept going, and
No, and for me it was Jerry Mass, my professor at Chicago, who I mentioned, and we would argue endlessly about Scorsese versus De Palma, and he would take the De Palma side, and I'd take the Scorsese side, and history has proven me right. But I respected him so much that I was like, oh, exactly, Mike, that I must be missing something here.
Yeah.
So
I want to bring up another book. It's actually one of my favorite recent books, and this is about film, and it deals with a movie that I refuse to see, Coming to America.
I like Coming to America.
I refuse to see it, not because of what it's about, but you know the story behind it.
About
Okay,
The making of the movie?
the title of the book is Fatal Subtraction.
oh.
The inside story of Buchwald versus
Oh, right, the Art
Paramount.
Buchwald thing.
This
Yeah,
is
yeah,
a
yeah,
fascinating book. And for people who
He
don't...
wrote the screenplay, or
He
gave
had
him the
written
idea?
the original treatment.
Right.
And he had submitted it to Paramount like 5 years before the film got made. The film was made, of course. Nobody... Buchwald's name was not on it. He never received a dime. And he sued. And in most cases, and this happens a lot in Hollywood, the studio will just outlast the suer, or the
settle,
suing, or settle. Well, they won't even settle. They'll settle for a few cents, or they'll say you'll never work in this town again. You couldn't do that with Buchwald, because with Buchwald, he was, millionaire many times over. For people who don't know who Art Buchwald was, he was a political satirist and columnist. Worked for the Washington Post, and he's a very, very funny man. And so the judge in the case ruled in favor of Buchwald, and they said, you are entitled to a certain percentage of the profits. And that's when Paramount came up with their creative accounting, saying
right.
that despite the fact that it grossed $285 million domestically in 1988 or 89,
Yeah.
there were no profits.
Oh, man.
And that was where the title came. Of course, Buchwald appealed, And the studios finally settled for, I think, $900,000 because they didn't want.
Yeah. What was the book? It was Stephen Bach, the book he wrote about Heaven's Gate.
Oh God, that's a very
Final
good book
Cut.
too. Yes. Oh my God.
About David Bailman and
Yes.
and the $45 million
Yes.
spent on Heaven's Gate
Oh
and
my
how
God,
that
that's an excellent
that
book.
destroyed United
Yes.
Artists. Yeah. So if you're interested in the business of Hollywood,
Yes,
those are
which
two
I
really
am.
good. Yeah.
I
The last one I want to mention in terms of period is one we've talked about, because our third episode, way back in 2018, we did on 1990, whatever happened to the generation of 99. And Brian Raftery wrote a book called 1999 Best Movie Year Ever. And it's a little obvious, but there are a lot of. He writes really well about the great films of that year, Magnolia, and and The Matrix, and so many, and Election, and so many other great films that came out that year, and how that generation has sort of not.
well, we did a whole
Right, we
episode
just
on
said
it.
that.
Yeah.
That's right. So episode
He went
3,
to sleep
check
for
it
a
out.
minute.
I know he does. Loosen the leash a little
I'm
bit.
just
He needs
reading
more
your
oxygen.
list.
No more.
I'm just reading your list.
Oh man! All right, it's getting kinky over here. And finally, we come to our last category: biographies and memoirs. And I mentioned von Sternberg's Fun in a Chinese Laundry, which, as I said, is probably the best autobiography by a director that I've ever read. But there aren't too many good ones.
I want to mention, and this is semi-gossipy, but it's also a book about women and producing, and it's been called The Longest Suicide Note Ever Written. Julia Phillips, You'll Never Eat Lunch in
Oh
This
yeah,
Town.
yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
She won the Oscar with
Sting.
for The Sting,
Yeah.
and she also produced Close Encounters of the Third
Taxi
Kind
Driver.
and Taxi Driver,
Right.
and then she went downhill and wrote this book. And apparently there were restaurants in Hollywood that banned her after that.
Wow.
Oh, after the book.
After the book came out. And she died relatively young at 57. She
That's
had
right.
major drug problems.
Yeah.
It's a fascinating book.
And that reminds me of Evans's The Kid Stays
Yes,
in the Picture,
yes.
which is also kind of fundamental, because
Yes.
Evans is such a character.
Yes.
I mean, and if you give him, he took all the credit for Paramount's huge successes in the 70s.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if he deserved it or not.
Well, he's
but-
still-
Including
The Godfather. He went on and on and on about he was the reason that The Godfather was a great movie, and kept taking credit for the way certain things were edited, and that, I mean, the man was crazy.
the one,
yeah.
the one that I thought was really nuts was him taking credit for the success of Harold and Maude, a picture Paramount buried.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, well.
And speaking of Robert Evans, I'm just finishing this book.
The Big Goodbye.
Yes,
Yeah.
by Sam Wasson.
It's out in paperback
Yes.
now. Good. I was waiting for
Chinatown and the Last Years of Hollywood. I'm just getting to where I almost don't want to say too much about it because I want you guys to read it. But he talks about the people behind the success of Chinatown, and he focuses on Robert Towne,
it. Sure.
Jack Nicholson, Roman Polanski, and Robert
And Evans.
And but there are so many changes from what Robert Towne originally wrote that Polanski changed.
Well, and
Polanski could have gotten a
Changed the
credit.
ending, which is
but
fairly
not just the ending.
fairly
Not just the
critical.
ending.
Interesting.
Not just the ending. He changed a lot. And when you think about it, Towne really did get to write the Giddy's movie that he wanted to, and it was a failure, The Two Jakes.
Oh my god! And wasn't Evans supposed to play one of the characters in The Two Jakes?
I
originally?
haven't gotten to The Two Jakes yet.
Evans, they fancied Evans an actor, and
Well,
they
he
did,
started out as an actor.
right,
Yeah.
and they shot one day's worth of film, and Nicholson was like, "No, this is not going to work," and he didn't barely had the heart to tell him. But yeah,
But this is it's kind of written. It's not a straight biography. It's not even a scholarly book per se, but everything you ever wanted to know about Chinatown.
well, and except for Kane, in Cale's book, you very rarely see great books about one film.
Yeah.
And I cannot wait to read that. I was waiting for it to come out in paperback. So again, that's The Big Goodbye, Sam
Big
Wasson's
Goodbye,
book
Sam Wasson.
about Chinatown, which is joining the pantheon, I think. I'm going to throw in the one great book by one of our great screenwriters about how horrifying the life of a screenwriter is in Hollywood, and that, of course, is William Goldman's Adventures in the Screen
I have
Trade.
it right here.
Yep.
Yeah,
And
he has it in three sections.
Still the best book about what it means to be a screenwriter in Hollywood.
You know, the section 1 is Hollywood Realities, a collection of essays on various subjects from Hollywood stars and producers, and to write a screenplay. He did not like Robert Redford, oddly enough.
Listen, this is the man who wrote The Princess Bride, so he's God as far as I'm concerned.
And this was written before The Princess Bride.
Yes.
And then 2, Adventures, his take on projects he had worked on until 1983. And then the third section, which I really found interesting, was Da Vinci, and shows the reader how to adapt something, and he adapts his own short story, Da Vinci. So it's also a good primer for writing. And he's also written one of my favorite theater books.
Oh.
And that's from the 60s.
I did not know that. What's
The
that?
Season. It's
Which is
called The
about
Season.
1 year.
It's
and-
about one season,
Huh.
1967 to 68. I think it's still in print. If it's not, it's anybody who listens to this broadcast who's interested in theater should get that.
Yeah, go on ABE Books. They have,
Yeah.
you can find anything there.
Actually, I
that's
like
out of print.
I like The Season more than Adventures in the Screen Trade.
Is there a good book about town?
About Robert Town?
Yeah, I've
I
never
don't
seen
know-
one.
I don't
He
know
never
of
wrote
any.
an autobiography?
No,
Or no?
and he's still
Just-
alive.
I don't know of any.
Maybe after he dies.
I would love to see. John, anything else on the biography, autobiography note?
Well, the Sidney Lumet book is pretty good
Oh,
as
yeah.
far as
Oh.
covering almost all aspects of movie making. It's
Yeah.
not, I mean, it's sort of a memoir, but it's not gossipy
No,
at all.
not at all.
It's basically gives you a really good overview about how to make a movie.
Oh, fantastic. Oh,
Yeah.
I've never read it. I'm going to totally
yeah.
pick that up.
Oh, yeah.
Come out.
When did that come out? Ooh,
about
it's quite a
20
while ago.
Was it? I mean, he was still. Well,
was-
of
I
course, he
think
was
he was-
directing till the end.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was.
We mentioned him in our last episode, favorite last movies and
Right.
directors before the devil
And
knows
I
you're
mean,
dead.
and actually, a great director with actors.
Oh, yeah.
He really
And
was.
he rehearsed.
Yes, I was just going
One
to
of
say.
the few directors who rehearsed.
Yeah, he knew. I mean, he knew how to work with actors. He knew about acting.
He was an actor himself.
Yeah,
Right.
And actually, some of the interviews with him are pretty good. When he'll talk about acting in general and certain
Yeah.
actors, and we'll stress about how some of the images we have of actors is just not wrong at all. Most of them are very private, shy people.
All right, and Vintage Sand fans, there you have it. We have given you enough, we usually try to take you to school. Today we took you to the library. And we hopefully have given you enough books to get you started. And really, I mean, the best way to learn film is to watch it, but also there's a ton to be learned from books by the people involved and by some of the smarter critics and writers who've written about it. So we hope that, as I said at the beginning, that this has opened some doors for you, because we, I think I can speak for Michael and John saying, so much of our understanding of movies came from these books as well as our own observations.
Yeah.
I mean, they taught us to see things in a different way.
Yes, exactly.
Yep. All right, so I believe our necrology this time is blessedly short.
It is, surprisingly.
Michael?
Jackie Mason, comedian. He appeared in The Stoolie, which he produced himself. The drama.
Oh, no, nobody saw it.
And he lost a fortune.
I opened the door, turned the wheel, nobody saw it.
He also appeared in Mel Brooks' History of the World Part 1 as Jew number 1.
That's right, in the Inquisition number. I remember that.
And in The Jerk is the gas station owner who hires Steve Martin. And on a personal level, I had to tell him to shut up. Well, not shut up. To keep his voice down at a viewing of Find Me Guilty, the Sidney Lumet movie with Vin Diesel. I remember because it's the only Vin Diesel movie I've ever seen. He just wouldn't shut up. He just kept talking, and it was like...
Should have said it in Hebrew. You should have said, Sheket Bavakasha.
And he was sitting right behind me. And I just...
You know that.
That's the only thing I know in Hebrew, but
And I
there you
just
go.
turned around and I said, "Would you please keep it down?" And that's when I realized, oh, it's him. Okay, Vladimir Meshmel, the Russian film director. He won the Oscar in 1981 for what is considered by most Oscar followers and film historians as the worst movie ever to win the Academy Award for Best Foreign Language film. Moscow Does Not Believe in Tears.
Oh, right. Oh, my God.
Yeah, and it is bad. It had lost to Francois Truffaut's The Last Metro and Akira Kurosawa's Kagemusha. Am I pronouncing that right?
I don't love Kagemusha, but it's better than it's better than Moscow.
And
Does Not Believe in Tears.
I remember staggering out of the theater. It's almost 3 hours long, and it's Vincent Canby described it as saying giving this movie the Oscar was like giving the Pulitzer Prize for fiction to Rona Jaffe.
Maybe they felt bad about not giving Best Picture to Red, so they figured they'd make it up to the communist nations.
No, this was the year before.
The year before.
This was the year before. A lot of people thought it was a political thing because Reagan was just in the White House and they wanted to throw a bone to Russia. I don't know, but it's not. I can't think of a movie that's won the Oscar.
Is there anything good you can say about him?
Well, that's all I can say. I don't think he ever had another movie that came to this country.
Ouch.
I mean, remind me not to have you do a eulogy.
Seriously. Don't watch my films if I ever make it.
Okay, this is a happier eulogy.
Okay.
Jane Withers.
Good, I love happy eulogies.
I didn't know there was such a
It's my
thing.
favorite part of
Well,
Okay, so Jane Withers.
Jane Withers. For people who don't know her, she was a child actress.
Shirley Temple's competition, right?
Well, they only made one film together, and that was in 1934, Bright Eyes. Apparently, Shirley Temple's mother was so worried about Withers that she wouldn't allow Temple to even talk to her off set.
Worried about her in what way?
Competition.
Oh.
Yeah. And in 1937, Jane Withers was named number 6 by theater owners as the top box office star, which was odd because all of her films were basically B movies. But usually her movies would end with her getting spanked because she was
So did mine.
the antidote.
Well, it had to be said. It was just sitting there.
Anyway, she was the antidote to Shirley Temple. She married in 1947, and she retired from acting, but then returned in 1956 to play the neighbor in Giant.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yes. And she also appeared in Captain Newman M.D. and a lot of television. Oh, and she was also the voice of the gargoyle in Disney's Hunchback of Notre Dame 2.
Right.
She replaced Mary Wicks at the last minute, who died. And I remember her, and this is one of the few Hitchcock shows, the hour long, that I really remember liking as a kid. I don't think he directed it. That she did with Bob Newhart called How to Get Rid of Your Wife. And it was I was like 7 or 8, but I remember finding it very funny. But of course, Jane Withers is best known for Josephine the Plumber.
Yes.
Which she did for like 14 years. Comet commercials.
Comet, that's right, in the 70s.
Yeah.
Yep.
And she died at 95. And our last is Patricia Hitchcock O'Connell.
Yeah, that's right.
That's right.
Yep. The only child of Alfred Hitchcock. What I didn't know is that she appeared 3 times on Broadway as a teenager before making any
Before
movie.
she went to
RADA.
Oh.
Yeah. They weren't plays I'd ever heard of, but she did work as a kid.
She's just, in Stage Fright Strangers and Psycho, she's just like pitch perfect.
Right.
She's absolutely perfect.
And she also did 10 Alfred Hitchcock shows from 1955
Well, I didn't know she did that many.
She did, yeah.
Yeah,
And
you're right. Actually, the bit parts she has in the 3 movies,
Especially
she's
in Strangers.
Excellent. She's excellent. Oh, yeah.
I mean, she's wonderful as
And
as the sister.
in 2003, she wrote with Laurent Bourgeois, Alma Hitchcock,
Right.
the woman behind The Man. Did either one of you read it?
No, but I know Film Forum, our beloved revival theater here, is doing the Women Hitchcock series.
I saw Vertigo last week, which was packed with people.
I would hope so.
who didn't like it.
What?
No.
No.
Yeah,
No.
there are a lot of people who do not like
Yeah.
Vertigo.
The friend I took did not like it.
Well, I mean, last time I saw it in the theater, I mean, at the department store scene, people were squirming, like...
People were laughing with the scene between Midge and the doctor. People were laughing at that scene, and there's nothing funny.
Nothing funny about that.
Yeah.
I don't think Mozart's going to cure him either.
Yeah, which is a great line.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, that's okay.
But I, besides my friend who I took who did not like it, I went into the men's room.
And you heard people talking.
Yeah, waiting in line, and people just did not.
It's interesting because
there are a lot of people who love Hitchcock who do not like Vertigo.
Woody Allen says in his memoir he loves all of Hitchcock except for Vertigo.
And Sight and Sound's poll is coming out next year, the big one, and Vertigo finally got past Kane as number one in 2012.
I got a feeling it might not stay.
I don't think it's going to stay.
Have you ever shown it to your students? And what do they think?
Yes, they like it.
Okay.
But I have to kind of talk them through it.
Interesting.
Okay.
Rear Window does much better. And Strangers on a Train does much better.
Everybody loves
Rear Window's a little lighter. I mean, it's Rear Window is almost a comedy.
It is.
Yes.
It's very witty.
It's a movie for everybody. Vertigo is not. I love it.
Yeah.
But I'm
not saying.
I have to throw one more quick eulogy in here because I am an insane fan, and I assume many of our listeners are, of the BBC Sherlock with Benedict Cumberbatch and Martin Freeman. And Una Stubbs, the woman who played Mrs. Hudson, passed away. And
I wasn't familiar with her.
Yeah, she's a character. She appeared. She does a couple of movies, but nothing big. But the Sherlock episodes. There's only 13 of them, and they're an hour and a half each. So they really are like little movies. And she's just priceless. So she is definitely going to be missed. And if you haven't caught that. It's my favorite rendition of Sherlock Holmes I've ever seen. Do you guys like it? Have you seen it?
I've not seen it.
Oh, it's wonderful. John, have you?
I haven't watched it, but I intend to because I always enjoyed the old Sherlock Holmes movies with Nigel Bruce and Azaretho.
And these are so...
I was in a Sherlock Holmes play where I played Inspector Lestrade, and it was not a great experience, so I've avoided.
Oh. Well, all right, and...
How could it be a good experience playing Inspector Lestrade? You're the brunt of all the jokes.
It wasn't the play, it was the people I was working with.
All right, we're waiting for Mike's autobiography. We'll get all the dirt.
His memoir is going to be a juicy one.
Exactly.
Published.
He gets spanked at the end, apparently.
I think he's going to do the spanking.
There it is. All right. So, and the introduction of our new feature last time, John's quote, which you should check out our website at www.vintagesand.
Shall I give the answer now?
Please give the answer now. The quote
the quote was, "I'd hate to take a bite out of you. You're a cookie full of arsenic." Is from Sweet Smell of Success, Burt Lancaster to Tony Curtis.
1957.
Yeah, great movie. If you haven't seen it, you must. Directed
James
by Alexander James. Oh my God, the cinematography.
New York City, black and white,
is brilliant.
on location.
Absolutely
oh my God,
brilliant. Yes, that's another thing. That aspect of the movie that's really so entertaining, because you're seeing New York City in 1956, 57, and it's never looked more.
Since you're quoting, you should mention the writers.
Yes. Ernest Lehman was based on a so-called novelette by Ernest Lehman that appeared in Cosmopolitan.
Oh, okay.
And so he was the main screenwriter, plus Clifford Odets, and the director Alexander McKendrick also made contributions to it, but he was not credited.
That happened a lot.
Yes. Oh, sure. I mean, Hitchcock and Hawks were never credited as screenwriters in any of their movies, but they were involved.
After reading The Big Goodbye about Chinatown, I just had no idea how much Polanski.
Yeah, it happens often.
Yeah.
All right, so for September, what is our next quote?
I looked for you in my closet tonight.
Oh, I know that one.
If you've seen the movie, you know the quote.
Unmistakable.
Yes, you're right, Josh.
Yes, I'm not saying, but...
But I can tell you can't wait to tell someone.
No. So again, if you know where that quote is from, oh my God! If you know where that quote is from, check right in at www.vintagesand.com. We also have all links to all our old episodes and descriptions and links and other things for you to check out. to improve your knowledge of film. So, for our next episode in September, we will be moving away. We've been so director-centric, which a lot of film people are, under the influence of Truffaut and Andrew Sarris and critics like that. We're going to get towards actors.
Yay!
And we're going to, I have two actors
We've kind
here.
of avoided this subject also because it's so hard to narrow it down,
Right.
favorites.
So we are going to focus on some of our favorite male supporting performances. We haven't decided quite yet whether we're going to narrow down the time or the country, but we will focus on we'll each choose maybe our 5 favorite supporting male performances that are overlooked or underappreciated.
Didn't win the Academy Award.
Didn't win the Oscar.
Yes.
Okay, yeah, absolutely. All right, so especially today where she totally saved our asses, we thank Melissa for her technical help. Yes, Melissa! Woo-hoo! For our 5 9s and a 4 production, we want to thank Mama Sue for the use of the hall, Vintage Sand Studios Nord. We want to thank Gabby for the cool-ass logo. Remember that we are also on Spotify and Apple Podcasts and SoundCloud as well. Please check out the website, as I said, answer John's quiz, and leave us your feedback. And as we wish you in all episodes and at all times, may your favorite films always be streaming.